It's Ben Decker with the Modern Spirituality Show, and I'm super stoked to introduce you to my friend Vivien Vilela. She's the founder of Aniwa and the Boa Foundation. Thanks for coming, Vivien.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and so I love what you're doing with Aniwa, the platform, the events, as well as your Boa Foundation. Could you just give us an overview of what you're doing there?
Yes, absolutely. So the Boa Foundation we created back in 2015. It's a nonprofit organization, and we do projects in indigenous communities all around the world. Mainly our focus is land buyback initiative, and then also sustainable living through water wells, through eco-friendly, like dry bathrooms, solar panels, and everything that makes their lives easier and more sustainable in different communities. We always listen to them. We work directly in alliance with indigenous leaders, and they tell us what it is that they would like for their communities, and then we make it happen. And so we do also cultural centers, schools, and then from that connection, also Aniwa was created. And Aniwa is a movement amplifying the voice of indigenous leaders all over the world. And so we have a digital platform which has wisdom offerings. And then we have a yearly gathering bringing together 40 of the most respected indigenous keepers around the world. And then we also have retreats throughout the year. So those are the two main missions that we are working on.
Wow, I love how holistic it is. You know, there's like an ecosystem of the work that you're doing, where you're listening to the indigenous communities, listening to their needs, providing according to what they're requesting, and also facilitating a channel where their wisdom can be made available by them to people who are interested. There's a big movement around plant medicine and shamanic practices, and it's really common to see many people who are maybe not indigenous or second, third degree away from being indigenous sharing this. So what you're doing, I think, is especially crucial. So I love the way that you're doing it. And what does Aniwa mean? You were telling me a little bit before, but I thought it was so interesting.
Aniwa means, in Hunchaquin, the Huniquin language, means a stepchild, which is these indigenous leaders embracing all cultures as their own children and teaching us, all of us, the ways of their ancestral ways that they've been using for time immemorial. And then we named it like that, and we put a logo as our rainbow. We put a rainbow as our logo. And then the Maori leader that is part of Aniwa told us that Aniwa Niwa means rainbow in Maori. And then we also came to find out that Aniwa means Mother Earth in Yoreme.
Wow, what a powerful word. I love all of those meanings, but I'm especially intrigued, of course, by the stepchild hidden meaning. It's almost like it was like a secret meaning. You mentioned before that you weren't originally even aware of that one of the definitions, you know, but that's what I love, that you started with that. That's the one that you told me first. That's the one you lead with. And you know, I'm a white person. I'm a descendant of you know, settlers and all of that. So as I learn about indigenous cultures, I want to really be sensitive to doing things correctly, you know, to honor what's really there and sort of do things in a way that my ancestors and the people who were part of the same movements and same nations as my ancestors, what they have done, you know, trying to like look at the opposite of the way they did it, where they took over something, you know, the opposite of this colonizer consciousness of co-opting, of taking and rebranding and appropriating. So I think it's really amazing that you've created a channel for someone like me who's interested, deeply, genuinely interested, and maybe many of these listeners, but not from this culture, and not from these cultures, and only knowing things based on the religious, spiritual, and social worldviews that I was raised in, you know. and being able to willing to revisit the narratives of history as we were raised, to believe. So I think it's really amazing for me to have the chance to be a stepchild, or an adopted child into some of these, ancient, timeless teachings and communities.
Absolutely. It's interesting because my partner and I, we were doing a dieta with the Huni Queen many years back, and they wrote a prayer for us, and that word was there, and I fell in love with it. And so I told my partner, Rudy, hey, this should be the name of our organization, Aniwa, let's ask them what it means. And we asked the man, and initially he told us he meant Mother Earth. And so, or our mother, he said. Mm-hmm. And I said, oh my God, this is perfect. And so we named it. And then when we did the first gathering, other Huni Queen leaders came and they said, no, this word actually means a stepchild, because many of them have lost their language. And so there was that confusion. But funnily enough, stepchild was even more suitable for the vision for what we are doing. And it's so beautiful to see the open-heartedness that they have towards Western culture, even that nearly obliterated their culture. They suffer an incredible upheaval and almost lost everything. And here they are now opening their arms and receiving all cultures as part of their own and sharing with the utmost amount of love. And to me, that's very inspiring. To me, that's really what the world needs, is the ability to not forget, because you can never forget the things that happen, but to forgive, right. to forgive and to keep on moving forward and try to write a different story. Because when we're just propagating trauma and separation and we can't accept everything that happened in the past, we aren't going to be able to shift the consciousness. We aren't going to be able to shift into a different story. And so this is what we're doing. The main purpose of Aniwa is writing a new story for our children, one of unity, one of harmony, one of healing, one that invites all colors, creeds, and races to come together.
That's amazing. I love that. You hear a lot of book religions using that kind of language, and you hear, different religious and spiritual communities wanting to do that kind of thing, but you don't always see it actually embodied. And you don't always see people in these organizations really living to the embodiment of their own teachings. And it's almost like it's so obvious you don't even need to say that, But what I found in a number of my encounters with Indigenous elders who are sharing the wisdom is like a deep sincerity, a deep presence, a welcoming, and a deep patience too. I see a pattern of boundaries. There are healthy boundaries. There are things that are expected in ceremony. The space is held very sacred. And I also see, in addition to those very firm boundaries, a very deep acceptance of what someone is going through when they're in the context of that ceremony and where they are in their process.
Absolutely. I think discipline is also freedom, and these ways, the sacred ancestral ways, they require a lot of discipline and a lot of respect, and of course the elders is a very sensitive line to walk. Of course we see people who go and try a medicine once, or go to the Amazon once and they come back serving ayahuasca, or they go, places and buy sacred things like, wearing a headdress, a bonnet, and many things, they have to be earned, and many things are part of these cultures and they are not supposed to be worn or used flippantly by people that have no idea what they represent or are, or have had no initiations to earn any of this. So, those boundaries need to be respected. Those medicines, all of them, the sacred medicines, they have a tradition, they have a root, they have a design and a story. And so, cultural appropriation is that's what it is. It's just taking things that have an entire tradition behind them and then changing them to suit a different narrative. And so
Mhm.
And that's why Aniwa, we're passionate about that, about teaching people to learn to the elders directly and take these teachings, not to become indigenous, not to start, not to be initiated on anything, but simply to take that message and embody transmission from an elder that has studied their entire lives to develop this sacred connection and to acquire this energy that they can share and they can heal, they can transform someone's life, no? So the intention of Aniwa is to honor the sacred ways, is to bring those ways into the world, because God knows the world needs it now more than ever before, so that each person can learn simply the foundations of life, which is the connection with the earth, the connection with the water, the elements that give us life. These are simple foundations of life, which everyone knew, every culture knew. And then the dominant culture forgot it first, had it taken away from them first. And then they went ahead to propagate that trauma and to eliminate all of the indigenous, no? Massacre all of the indigenous in a crazy pursuit of money and greed and things, to just I guess fill up a gap that within that they can't even understand what it
Right.
is, no? So
Right.
it's
It's like
just
it's the universe-sized hole in the heart. It's the hole that's as big as the universe that you try to fill with cars and clothes and possessions and experiences, but really the only thing that will fill it is connection.
absolutely. And everyone is looking around so much for the meaning of life, for the key to happiness, for a sense of belonging, and then going all these different routes through consumerism, through development at the cost of the life of our Mother Earth, and through drug addiction, through meaningless relationships, through pharmaceuticals, and all these things, which drive someone further and further and further from one's true essence. And then when it's all gone, what are we going to eat? What are we going to drink? No? And it's so easy and simple, and it's right there, right before our eyes. No, and these people have lived in this way for time immemorial, for their entire lives. No, and so this is what they are bringing back to us now, that sense of belonging, that sense of responsibility to something so much bigger than us. And then whenever we are in sacred service, in sacred harmony, in a reciprocal relationship with the earth, then we're home, then we belong, because we can feel that love and we have a purpose, no? And which is so beyond how much money we can ever make, no? Which is so beyond anything we can ever achieving ourselves, no? Achieving peace within and harmony with all there is.
Yeah, and it seems that is so clearly the purpose and meaning of so many in so many different ways of so many of the plant medicines. It's like that's the core of their message. When you sit with them and you learn with them, that's for me, that's the message that's always there. It's that I'm at home on this planet with this planet, this connection that's there, and then from that connection everything else is realized, everything else changes, everything else can change. And I think it's so interesting, like even the word appropriation is to take something out of context and make it appropriate. It's because it makes it appropriate in another context. So that's why we call it appropriation. We're taking something and that's from a completely different universe and making it appropriate for this other thing, when really a headdress out of context is irrelevant. The headdress is not a hat, it's not decoration. That's the least of what it actually is. It has much deeper symbolic meaning to it. And what you just said, that connection to nature, that's really what we're there for. If you don't have that part, then it doesn't matter what you're putting on your head.
It's inappropriate, if anything.
Inappropriated. Yeah, inappropriated. Yeah, appropriation is pretending something is appropriate outside of its context, inappropriation. Yeah, cultural inappropriation. Yeah, so I'm super excited. You actually have an opportunity. Your annual gathering is coming up here. At the time of this recording, we're a few weeks out. You do this every year, so even if you're hearing this after this upcoming event, you can check out the show notes. We have the link to Aniwa and the Boa Foundation. You can learn about all the different upcoming events there. But right now, at the time of this recording, we're excited about the June 2023 Aniwa gathering. You want to tell me about that one?
Yeah, it's happening in Big Bear, California on June 8th to 11th. And we're bringing together 40 of the world's most incredible Indigenous leaders from cultures all around the globe. And so even Chief Hao Ni is coming. I don't know if you know who he is, but he's a Nobel Prize Peace nominee, the one that has the plate in his mouth that has been, fighting for the preservation of the Amazon and indigenous cultures. He traveled all around the world with Sting. He's an elder, no? And that plate in his mouth means someone that is ready to die for his people. And this man is really a living symbol of the fight for the Amazon and for indigenous cultures. He's really an incredible man. And alongside with him, we have Mona Polaka, who is a founding member of the 13 Grandmothers Council, 13 Indigenous Grandmothers Council. She's a water protector also, who speaks at the UN and is called to defend the water all around the world. This woman's water blessing are some of the most touching, beautiful prayers. Everyone is always in tears. She really speaks. The spirit of the water really speaks through her. And then through those prayers, harmonizing the internal waters of each person, of each participant. And then we have Joe David Osage. He's an arrow priest, one of 16 arrow priests in the Cheyenne culture. And he's also the keeper of the Blue Sky Bundle. He's in charge of the blue skies. He's in charge of the rain prayers for his people. And so he's going to do a ceremony, an ear piercing ceremony, which is for children to listen to their parents and to retain all of the wisdom taught to them and to let go of all things that are negative that they hear. So at Aniwa, we're going to be doing it to the adults as well, because there are many in need.
Yeah, wow.
And many others.
An ear piercing ceremony. How incredible is that? I've not experienced that before. I have no piercings.
Yeah, so we're actually not going to pierce through at the gathering just for liability reasons, but it's the ceremony. It's done with a porcupine quill. And so he's going to do the whole ceremony and touch the quill into the person's ears. And then you can go and pierce your ear magically right after or whenever you want to. And so these rituals are things that are done in these indigenous cultures from someone to someone since they are born. Many types of, which is to present a child to the spiritual energy so that they can look after them and guide their path. To connect a child to their senses, to connect a child to their guides, so the child will never go astray. They will follow their parents' lead. And it's so beautiful. There are many other incredible activities, like Grandmother Lanessa Moonwalker. She teaches how to connect with crystals. She jokes, she says she will teach how to speak Rockanese, which is, so many people have crystals and they're just buying crystals just because they're pretty or because they read on the internet that they do this, that, and the other. But actually, each crystal has an energy that works differently for every person. And each of them have a spirit. And just like the plant medicines, it's so learning to connect to the spirit of that crystal and what that crystal can work with each person, how that crystal can help each person be in alignment and heal and all these different things.
So I have a question. That's amazing. That's super interesting to me, because I think a lot of people are really familiar with like the new age experience of crystals. Crystals are have become so cliche within like the new age movement that it's almost like become a joke.
Yeah.
I know Marianne Williamson is running for president, and one of the negative things the establishment political class says about her is that she's a crazy crystal lady, you know? And it's like, so you're telling me that the actual real indigenous cultures have an ancient practice of relating to these crystals. Is that right?
Absolutely. And the indigenous cultures, they work with all the kingdoms of nature. And so each rock, crystals or simple rocks you find on the ground, they have a spirit. So over there in Aniwa, we also have sweat lodges, which is using volcanic rocks to go into a sweat lodge, put water on top, and it releases pure oxygen. And this is a deep healing ceremony, to connect to the elements. And it represents rebirth. It represents going into the womb of our Mother Earth. And there we are receiving the wisdom of these volcanic rocks. And so in this activity, we are learning the personality of these crystals, but it's in the same way we can connect with every single tree who are our ancestors, who have messages. And there are stories actually about people who got healed from cancer by a tree. There are books about it. And so the indigenous peoples, they work with every single element of nature, with the sun, with the moon, with Mother Earth, with the fire, with the wind. And all of these beings, they are alive and they give us life. If you think our body has the same quantity of water as Mother Earth does, we are a microcosm of the earth. And so when we learn to connect with the spirit of these elements, we give life to them within us as well. They are alive, but when we are unconscious of them, when we're having negative thoughts, we are programming our internal waters to be scattered. When when we have negative thoughts, we're sending out messages we're sending out information into the collective consciousness, and we're manifesting those as prayers. And so, yes, the crystals, they are another thing that have been exploited, because they're taken from Mother Earth. Mother Earth is, for lack of a better word, raped for extractions of minerals and all of those things, no? And so how do we work with these things in alignment, in reciprocity? How do we find them from a good source? All of these things are taught there, no? The Mamos also make pagamentos. The Mamos don't like to extract the crystals, but when they find them, they give them back to the earth. They use tumas, this sacred types of crystals they find there too. And so the Mamos are also, they do incredible spiritual work. Every day they will take people through pagamentos, which is sacred offerings to settle our debt with Mother Earth. And then those provide healing as well. There is one incredible one for women, very powerful womb healing that the Mamos, the Zagas, the female Mamos will be performing, and the Mamos will do another ceremony, which is to heal sexual trauma. So the work is very, very deep and very foundational. And people ask us, wow, but don't you have plant medicine? So someone wrote to us like, oh, I'm disappointed you don't have any plant medicine. And then I responded this one, because if we don't have these foundations, these ceremonies are just as powerful as any ayahuasca ceremony or peyote, whatever you want to take. If you can take all plants in the world, if you don't have the foundations to connect with the earth, the plants cannot help you. You're just going to treat this as an experience. You're just going to, oh, cool, I saw some visions. But if you don't have the foundation to then make that a way of life, it serves nothing. A ceremony can transform people's lives, but if they go home and they don't have any spiritual practice and they continue to be totally disconnected from the world around them, they're not going to get very far. And so what Aniwa teaches is incorporating the elements in our daily life so that we can have a teacher. We don't need to wait for a pajé, a master shaman, someone to come and serve us some type of entheogenic plants. We do have plant medicine there, yes, but it's cacao ceremonies, it is cedar, it is sage, tobacco, all of these very powerful, very, very powerful medicines, which are healing plants, which sometimes people don't give credit to because they've only seen the new age use of them. They haven't seen the true traditional spiritual roots of these plants, which transform people's lives in a way that when they are done in a proper setting, with people that actually have a connection with the spirit of these plants. And so it's those which is that connection that is inherited in us. It's simply remembering where we come from, our deep connection that we have with all of the sacred beings that are the foundation of our lives.
Yeah, I love that. Wow, that was actually my next question: is what role is plant medicine going to have in this event? You know, people who have listened to past episodes where we've talked about wachuma, we've talked about hape, we've talked about ayahuasca, we've talked about cannabis and also psilocybin and all different kinds of and peyote as well. And I love what you just said. The reminder that sage and cedar and cacao, just because they're not entheogenic or psychedelic per se, doesn't mean that they don't have extremely powerful, potent messages and spirits and properties.
Yeah, and you know, unfortunately today, the majority of people that are not indigenous and call themselves medicine practitioners, many of them have not been through the initiations that it requires to have understanding of these plants. For instance, to serve ayahuasca, you know, the indigenous leaders, they're the most respected ones, such as Benke Pianco, for instance. He says, you know, you need to go through 10 years of initiations, of dietas that are minimum of 3 months, 3 to 6 months, for 10 years in the Amazon where this plant comes from, to have an understanding of what this plant is and to truly be able to be able to hold a proper ceremony with people, no, in that deep space where people are going to have huge transformational experiences that will be sustained in their lives, no. And so, and that's in the same way with the cacao. The Mayas say the same for the cacao. I don't know if 10 years, but it's also in many initiations to go and embody that divine connection with the spirit of the cacao. And so going to a ceremony with these people that worked with the tobacco, for instance, the Mayas, they see everything with the tobacco. They smoke these big cigars, puros, and they do readings with it. They can tell anything about your life that you ask. It comes up in that tobacco, no? And as they're smoking as well, they're cleansing the people. And that tobacco is cutting all of the blockages, is opening the path. And so like anything, you know, to become an accountant, you have to go to, you know, university for, I don't know, 4 years, or, you know, to become a doctor, you study for 10 years before you can start doing surgery on somebody, right? And it's the same to be a spiritual leader and to be any type of these leaders that come to Aniwa to do the kind of work that they do. It requires that much study. And then when they have, and they've spent their whole lives, right? They were born, all of them come from unbroken lineages. And so they embody those. And so they're a voice for nature. Those spirits speak through them. They carry that vibration. And so in their presence, there is that energy that touches people, that transforms people, that sometimes they don't even need to say anything. Just their presence heals, because they bring that, no? They bring all of their ancestors behind them.
Right. Yeah, there's that expression, you become the medicine.
Yeah.
Become the medicine.
Exactly. And we also have a hape there, by the way, at Aniwa Gathering. We have the Yawanawa and the Huni Queen. They do amazing hape ceremonies. Yeah.
So this is super exciting. So people, basically everyone should be coming to this. Anyone who's interested in plant medicine. A lot of people will maybe hear through like surprising means that they're interested in ayahuasca or something like that. You know, if you're interested in that, this is where you start for that path. To hear something about that, to watch a documentary about ayahuasca or something like that. This is really where you start. This is, if you're interested in that, this is where you come to really experience it and really see what's really here. Because a lot of what you hear about ayahuasca, I remember recently, I read an official statement. There was like the global, some kind of global event with indigenous leaders and in a forum on ayahuasca. And I read an official statement that had been released. I wish I knew the name of the organization or the event. Oops. But I'll find it and put it in the show notes. So they released an official statement, and one of the things that I thought was so beautiful and beautifully articulated was that they don't support the extraction of one chemical compound from the plant. So there's a whole conversation around DMT and a desire to study DMT as if it were the only important part of ayahuasca, for example. And it's very extractionist, like you said. It's an entire extractionist colonizer type of consciousness. And when you start with these foundations that you're talking about, when you really go in and learn from the people who know what they're talking about, who actually have a real relationship with these medicines, who are not breaking them down based on their perceived value, this compound over that value, over that compound. Certainly the DMT is an important part of the ayahuasca, but there are also thousands of other compounds within the ayahuasca, and each ayahuasca is not the same. And the ayahuasca is not even about the chemical compounds that are in it. You know, there's like you mentioned, there's a living spirit and a cultural context with ancient relationships, you know, amongst them. So I think it's a really exciting thing for someone like me. I'm 100% coming. I'm so coming to this. I'm like gonna just go and have I'm like gonna be silent and just absorb, you know, and just learn. And I think that's one of the most exciting things is that you know, I was raised Mormon, so I was raised Christian, and it's very much about proactively converting people to that religion. That's no longer my religion. There was a lot of things that were wrong about it for me. There was a lot of trauma and a lot of challenges leaving that religion. So I have a lot of sympathy for people who are questioning their tradition and trying to explore others. But for me, one of the most beautiful things that I see is that instead of forcing people and going door to door and sort of doing everything they can to convince conversion, what I'm seeing is a very sacred, natural softness and sacredness and protection around the purity of these teachings, which are largely oral and communicated from teacher to student through communities in the context of long lives. These are like you mentioned, it's 10 years to be initiated to serve your first cup of medicine, you know, and not just 10 years since you had your first cup of medicine, 10 years of relationship with a community, with a respected medicine leader.
Yeah, and actually, you're not even allowed to start initiations until you are stable in the medicine, what Benki says. So Benki Pianco, he's our Indigenous director. He's an incredible man who comes from a lineage of Antaviaris. Antaviari in the Ashaninka culture means a direct messenger of God. Someone who came here, never had a past life, came straight to this planet to exert God's mission here.
Wow.
And he is an ayahuasca master. His wisdom is really something really incredible. He's also an encyclopedia of healing plants. He's got a cure for everything. And so what he says, and by the way, his grandfather was the one who taught Mestre Irineu, the one who created the Santo Daime Church, who was also a very wise man, who ended up, he was demarcating land over there in the Amazon and met Benki's grandfather, and he taught him. So what he says is that someone, before they can even start their initiations, they need to be totally stable in the medicine, which takes a few years. They can't cry, they can't scream. They have to just be totally centered and stable, which means is they came to stability in their emotional, spiritual, physical bodies. The medicine has already cleansed them over the years. And so once they arrive there, only then can they start the training. So the whole process can take, you know, between 15 to 20 years. And what they talk about, all of the elders, regarding the removing alkaloids and compounds from the plants, is that it's a spiritual crime, that these plants were put here by God. You know, the DMT was not meant to be extracted from it, go through a chemical process and be smoked, you know, and that then they say it's become a drug, that what the nature made the plants perfect, just the way they are and the way they're meant to be taken. But they're not just meant to be taken. There is a design. which comes with the plants, which comes with the songs, which comes with the altar that those plants have been left by the ancestors, no? Is not also just taking the plant. The person is not going to have the same experience just taking this plant by themselves, or being in a ceremony where there is a leader calling in the spirits, calling in the ancestors, maintaining the harmony in the space through the songs. There's a science behind each song. You know, there's the songs to bring in the force. There are the songs to harmonize. There are the songs to bring healing. There are the songs to lower the force so the ceremony can close. And all of that, there's a science behind it. And so this is exactly the cultural appropriation piece again, is taking a plant, a millenary plant that was not scientifically discovered, was, you know, discovered by indigenous people who were totally connected with nature, who received the way that plant is meant to be used. How can we go there and break that plant apart and create our own version of it and say, okay, here's the medicine, it's packaged into a lab. We removed all the things that make you connect spiritually, and it's just going to heal you. You know, it's not like that. And for them, this is an aggression towards their culture and towards the sacred plants. No, we shouldn't mess with things that have been working for thousands and thousands of years. We should perhaps just listen to them and change our ways of thinking. We own everything.
Right.
And I'm not against science. I'm not against development. I think science and spirituality can walk hand in hand in a beautiful way. But I think there needs to be a lot of respect, and we need to listen to these leaders that are way ahead of science for, you know, thousands of years.
I think that's one of the most important things that's so hard for modern society to realize. We think of ourselves as so advanced and so sophisticated, but we're actually not sophisticated. We may have come a long way in the creation of technologies and all of that, but at extraordinary expense to life and to nature in a lot of different ways. And so there's actually this humility we have to realize, that we're not more advanced than something we don't understand. Just because you don't understand it means, you know, so often there's an anger when we don't understand something. We can find that if there's an arrogance paired with not understanding, anger can come up and defensiveness can come up, and we want to protect our existing worldview. We want to defend what we already perceive. And that's something that that's I believe the culprit of cultural appropriation, in addition to greed and the desire to personally profit off of something that someone else created, that another community created and understands. So there is like a really, really very serious humility that is a personal journey that each person in modern society has to really, really take and say, okay, even if I have my preconceived notions about healing, even if I have my preconceived notions about life, birth, and death, even if I have my preconceived notions about my relationship to other people, my relationship to nature, and my place within all of it, this is a space where it's actually about receiving information, receiving transmissions, welcoming new ideas, rather than immediately trying to make it fit into an existing worldview, or to adapt it so that it's compatible with an existing worldview.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think, you know, we need to learn the meaning of sacred, and we need to learn the meaning of reciprocity, you know, rather than just taking and see how much more we can take. We need to give back, because we are getting into a place that, you know, some animals cannot live anymore without the human interaction. No, humans are now dictating how the habitat of certain animals is going to be, and how that species will continue to procreate in order to exist, because we've taken everything. We've taken all of their homes, their territories. And I think we already have the technologies to live sustainably. It's just we need to let go of that greed, because we already know how to make plastics out of pineapple, out of corn. Why is it that we still have refineries being created and spread around in cities where everyone is dying of cancer and children are being born, you know, without a brain? But still, we keep on producing more and more and more of something that is plaguing the world and destroying your nature when we already have the technology, but it's just because it's cheaper and big corporations need to profit more. And so it's just that blinding greed and thoughtlessness. You know, our ancestors always dreamt about us and prayed for us for the 7 generations ahead. And this is how Indigenous people live. They are always praying for the generations to come and always thinking about them. You know, every step that we walk, we need to think about our children. There's a saying, no, that we are not leaving the world for our children. We're borrowing it from them. Some Indigenous leaders said that. Can't remember who it was now, but and so I think is that, no, we have so many amazing technologies. We already know the mushrooms eat plastic. We already know so many things. Why are we still doing things that are not helping us? Why are we still poisoning people with chemicals? Why is the United States still throwing away 1/3 of its food to go into landfills and create methane and pollute more and contribute to global warming when there is people starving without anything to eat? It's just some things are so illogical. You know, we could stop the whole world because of a pandemic. We could stop everything. We could produce 1 million masks, but we cannot feed the world population. We cannot give water to people. And so there are things that are just illogical, and we just have to think about truly how we're going to continue from now on. No, and each and every one of us as well have that responsibility to not support these kind of companies. No.
Right. Well, I have a question also, you know, when we think about timeless wisdom, ancient wisdom, Indigenous wisdom, in the written traditions around the globe, we find a lot of prophecies. So we find, like, in the Jewish tradition, there's this prophecy of a coming Messiah that will usher in like an era of peace. There's the Christian prophecy of the second coming of Christ. There's the Hindu prophecy of the future incarnation of the Kalki avatar, Krishna, his next incarnation, which will be the last need for him to incarnate because the whole world will heal. Buddhists have the prophecy of the incarnation of the Maitreya Buddha, the final and future Buddha, who is the Buddha of friendliness, of calling the whole world into peace through friendliness and connection. What are there prophecies like that within Indigenous cultures about this time that we could say are playing out now or could be in the future?
There are many prophecies, yes. We are seeing the coming true of many of them. Some are secret, and I think it's not my place to share them. But there is one that we used as the core of the Aniwa mission, which is the Rainbow Prophecy, that says we would come to a time where the forests would be burning, the rivers would be dying, the oceans would be empty of fish, and all the people would be fighting. And then the 8th fire would be lit, and the people would come together. They would look back to the elders and ask the elders for help, for teachings. And then they would join together as one swirling rainbow, people of all colors, creeds, and races. And then they would spread joy, understanding, and healing everywhere they went. And then at that time, species that had been extinct would come back to life. And I don't know if you have been following, but on the past few years, a lot of animals that were extinct came back. Or, you know, there was a jaguar that hadn't been seen in over 40 years that appeared in Taiwan. There were birds. There were just so many different species in different countries around the world have been seen again. And so I truly believe this, and we've seen a huge consciousness shift. We are going into the era of the feminine. We're dropping more and more into the heart. And we have seen a huge shift in the world. And I think we're seeing an even greater one now, post-pandemic, where people are truly looking for meaning, or truly looking for something deeper and something that they can trust on. You know, because I think a lot of people felt really lost and heartbroken. I think, no, truly a lot of people felt completely lost, heartbroken, and like, now what? No? on the past few years. And so I think there is a new time coming, and it's time for all of us to come together, really, to put our differences aside and celebrate all that makes us human, and honor the light in each other, and understand that we're not going to do anything alone. You know, Aniwa is not going to do anything alone. It takes all of us to coming together and truly doing it. You know, it is in our hands. And I'm so proud to have my baby. You know, I just had a child. She's 7 months old. And to see her learning from the elders, to take her into these initiations, to take her to the first Aniwa gathering now. And it fills my heart with hope and joy. And to see how happy she is. She's always smiling because she's being brought up in these ways, you know?
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, and I love that. I love the way that you're honoring that prophecy through aligning yourself in your work in the world, and serving as really a channel for that prophecy to facilitate it. You know, especially that component of us looking back to the elders, you know, and learning from them. So thank you so much for that. And may that whole prophecy be so, and may it come true, and may we be, and let us help us to do our part, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, I can't wait to meet you in person at the Aniwa gathering, June 8th. That info is going to be in the show notes, and I think I actually have a 10% off code that will drop in the show notes too. So you get 10% off your tickets. Please come join us. It's going to be amazing. I can't wait. Thank you for telling me a little bit about the different things that are going to be happening, because I wasn't even aware of like the ear piercing ceremony, the hape, the crystals, and I just know that so many people who are naturally drawn to these different things, especially the crystals, people who are drawn to crystals, they're going to just be so much more deeply enriched and satisfied with what's presented, you know, because it sounds so much richer and fuller and more authentic than what we've experienced. And I think so many people see crystals and gemstones and beautiful rocks and fossils and things like that, and have a connection and feel an attraction to it. But I can honestly say that there's a lot out there that has like a superficial, shallow understanding of it. And so I'm super excited even for that. I love a good crystal. You know, I don't exactly have a collection, but I have a lot of appreciation for nature creating such special magical things as crystals, you know. And I'm so excited to learn more about sage and cedar and tobacco and the other plant medicines. I can't wait to participate in the cacao ceremony and just learn so much about all of this in community with you and with all of these wonderful elders at this amazing event. You've worked so hard to coordinate and facilitate. So thank you so much for all that you do. And I can't wait to be there.
Thank you so much. I forgot to mention there is also a ceremony to call in romantic love or bless existing relationships. That's a winner. We've seen many couples being formed over there. And yeah, it's gonna change your life. It changes the lives of most people who go there. I'm so looking forward. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah. And for also sharing this message, for feeling called to support this mission. It means a lot to us. Thank you.
Yeah, the pleasure's all mine. Yeah, absolutely. See you soon. We'll have you back on again sometime soon.
Okay. Thank you. See you there. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.